Today, 40 years later, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is still Disney's best live-action film. A celebration next on Sci-Fi Buzz. There's so much on this week's Sci-Fi Buzz that you've got to stay tuned. A preview of 2 new interactive movies, a convention devoted to virtual reality, top sci-fi author Octavia Butler, and angels like you've never seen them before. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sci-Fi Buzz. I'm here in Sci-Fi Central. I'm Mike Jurek. You know what? I was very happy that Sequest ship blew up at the end of their season because, you know, that show has just never caught on with me. But they plan to take the series from Universal Studios here in Hollywood down to Florida, shoot more of the scenes outside. So maybe those real dive situations will help the show. I hope so, because the show is a very good concept. Such a good concept that 40 years later, Walt Disney's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, for my money, is still that studio's best live-action film. And that's reason to celebrate, isn't it? Let's go back to the thrilling days of the Nautilus when Captain Nemo would go in search of ships to destroy, you know, and big creatures to fight. Eek!
Jules Verne once said, "What one man can imagine, other men can do." And in his book, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Mr. Verne himself imagined some pretty weird and wonderful things. However, when we decided to make a picture out of this classic story, we soon discovered that though Mr. Verne was undoubtedly right, the imagining was much easier to do than the doing.
In what can only be called a daring move, the Walt Disney Company chose a sweeping 19th century science fiction saga for their initiation into live-action special effects cinema. Though probably the most respected animation studio in the world, most of Disney's creative team were ill-prepared to leap beyond a world where Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck ruled the roost. But that's not to say they weren't up for the challenge.
It's been an exciting experience here in Disneyland, where a wooden puppet called Pinocchio turns into a human. Peter Pan teaches children to fly. But my greatest thrill in this land of miracles was actually walking along the floor of the ocean with Captain Nemo and the crew of the Nautilus.
The Walt Disney Company's Laserdisc release of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea offers a behind-the-scenes peek at how this massive production was mounted. Included is an animated marine life segment that was created for the film but never used. Ultimately, some of the footage ended up on Disney's TV shows. And there are 2 Disney specials that focus on rigorous aspects of the production, from filming off the coast of the Bahamas to concocting a colossal squid.
We'll be fighting at close quarters with the most tenacious of all sea beasts. Stay clear of the tentacles. They'll seize anything within reach and hang on to the death. The only vital spot is directly between the eyes.
When 20,000 Leagues was released, the scene in which the giant squid attacks the Nautilus so impressed audiences, it helped garner a Special Effects Academy Award for the film. But before there was praise, there were problems. The biggest one was figuring out a way to conceal the squid's mechanics during a fight that was written to take place on a calm, flat sea at sunset. Finally, it was decided that instead the scene should occur at night, during a storm, so that darkness, spray, and turbulent waves would obscure the monster's hardware. Though it added dearly to the film's already substantial $4 million budget, Walt Disney himself offered enthusiastic approval for the change. 2 decades after the film's release, Robert Matty, the man who designed the giant squid, was called upon to help a young director named Steven Spielberg build a shark for his first big picture, Jaws.
With every turn of the camera, a new precedent is established, a new record set. This particular scene, for example, is the longest, most elaborate ever attempted underwater. There are 42 men at work here on the ocean floor. 20 actor-divers in front of the cameras, 22 technicians behind them.
The diving suits used on the film were designed just as Jules Verne had described them in his book. They weighed a hefty 225 pounds each. Self-contained twin tanks of compressed air allowed the actor divers to remain submerged for 2 hours. but for safety reasons, shooting never went beyond 55 minutes.
These dishes come entirely from my ocean kitchen. There's nothing here of the earth.
How remarkable. This tastes like veal.
The flavor deceives you. It is fillet of sea snake.
Disney made 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea 84 years after Verne's book was originally published in Paris. And 4 decades after first finding its way into American theaters, the movie still offers an assortment of cinematic treats. So despite Hollywood's recent achievements in cutting-edge techno tales, this film, like the book, can be regarded as a classic accomplishment that truly transcends the test of time. When we reconnect the buzz, movies that star heavenly baseball bodies and movies in which you participate. Did you ever watch a movie in frustration, knowing you could have come up with a better beginning, middle, and end? Well, thanks to high-tech happenings in the computer world, weak plot twists could be a thing of the past. We'll fill you in on this week's Buzz Best Bets. The merging of Hollywood and hardware has taken the computer industry by storm. CD-ROM technology has come so far, so fast, computer companies are creating interactive movies that are proving to be more involving than big screen efforts.
Apparently you never learned the first rule of a PI. Never, ever betray your friends.
Well-known actors like Brian Keith and Margot Kidder lend their talents to Access Software's futuristic detective thriller, Under a Killing Moon. Combining computer-generated 3D animation and real-time video, participants enter a virtual world where they can explore rooms, streets, and objects with 360-degree freedom.
I wish you were here now, Quincy. You were always there for me when I needed you.
Though many CD-ROM titles are categorized as games, they're as fun to watch as they are to play. Take, for instance, the elaborately produced gothic horror tale by Viacom New Media, Dracula Unleashed. Almost 150 different scenes were shot for the project, offering players multiple directions to steer the middle and the end of their storyline. It could be a few years before the technology for interactive cinema is perfected for big screen entertainment. In the meantime, computer buffs can pop in a disc, interact one-on-one with a small screen virtual world without ever leaving the comforts of home. Those are this week's Buzz Best Bets. Vintage Chuck Jones cartoons on home video, challenging video games. The 1951 fantasy film, Angels in the Outfield. A down-on-its-luck baseball team is blessed with some heavenly assistance. Disney's new remake of the film follows the same theme, but unlike the original, this time the Angels are seen and not just heard.
Williams makes a miraculous catch!
Our audience likes to know about how you do these things, how you make these films, especially this one, a fantasy film.
Angels, unlike, say, the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, were in some ways presented a different set of problems. At least in Jurassic Park, when they had the dinosaurs, they knew they had them, and they were absolutely real. Yeah. Here, we didn't know if we went too far, they became kind of very much religious icons and statues. If we didn't go far enough, they became too ethereal and very ghost-like. So the challenge was to do flying people, yet give them the humanity and the kind of soul that was needed for the angels.
The original film sidestepped the issue by using only angelic noises to represent the celestial beings. No doubt technical constraints back then had something to do with that decision too, but the advent of computer technology encouraged filmmakers of the updated version to create a sublime new vision for the screen.
In a flying creature, I wanted to apply physics to it. I wanted to, if an angel needed to thrust itself out of a scene, it needed to use its wings to thrust out. The bird. Whereas a lot of earlier winged creature movies, they'd be doing all kinds of things, and the wings would be going. And you went, what's going on here, you know?
Computer-generated imagery, or CGI, was initially used to build the angels from head to toe. But director Bill Deere and others involved in the effects process couldn't help but feel there was something missing from the design.
Effects-wise, we could have generated these angels totally on a computer, but we found that there was no humanity, there was no soul in the angels, and that's where we put the people back into it.
In the end, a more traditional blue screen process was used to capture the head movement and facial expressions of several actors. The human heads were then combined with computer-generated bodies, and voila, the film had its angels. Overcoming visual effects obstacles can be an exhausting endeavor, but Bill Deere has been embracing the challenge since long before coming to Hollywood.
My friend of mine, Robert Dyke, who was our visual effects consultant on this, he and I, in the late 50s, early 60s, all the early science fiction movies, we'd see one, we'd come home, we'd build a little set, we'd blow up a model, we'd take our 8mm, we have rolls and rolls of this stuff. So
Really?
we were joking about a month ago, we were just finishing up some of the effects, and Robert and I were saying that it's just like being in the backyard.
Yeah.
Just like being in the backyard.
A look at early VR at a VR con, and award-winning novelist Octavia Butler next.
Okay, there's Farrah Fawcett, and now there's a donkey. Okay.
What are you doing over there, Mike?
I'm working on my virtual reality goggles here. Whoa.
You look like those guys that used to do virtual reality back in the 60s.
The 60s? They didn't have VR in the 60s. Come on. Ah! Ah! Oh! Just kidding. I'm just fine. Did they really have it in the 60s? What's wrong with you? We better just go to the piece. Virtual reality appears to be on a runaway train to unimaginable places. In recent years, countless companies from every corner of the planet have feverishly jumped on this potentially lucrative bandwagon.
Competition is fantastic. There's no market without competition. You have to have competition to see this industry, which is now this whole convention center. I mean, when I started a few years ago producing these things, like there was 4 of us. You know, the audience was the speakers, really. This thing is just going out of this world.
Though virtual reality, or VR, is no longer an alien concept, for mainstream America, it still has a mystique. After all, it's only been a few years since most of us first heard those 2 words partnered side by side. But as we discovered on our recent trip to VR 94, a virtual reality exhibition in San Jose, California, the seeds of VR were planted over a quarter century ago. Visions of busy bees brainstorming in Silicon Valley undoubtedly come to mind when one envisions the origins of virtual reality. But the hotbeds for VR research have long been educational institutions. One of the pioneers to come out of this environment boldly left the cushy confines of MIT and forged his way into the jungles of corporate America.
Evans & Sutherland is one of the old-time computer companies, been around forever, 25 years in fact. Started by Ivan Sutherland, kind of the father of virtual reality, who built the first head-mounted display in 1966. There's some great history in this company.
Despite their longevity, Evans & Sutherland was at VR 94 plugging their latest offering with the enthusiasm of an upstart company. In an ambitious attempt to find new and unusual ways to use computer graphics to create 3D environments, they've come up with virtual reality hang gliding, and convention callers were eager to give it a go.
I guess it's the ultimate entertainment experience to take you out of your own life and go into something that's potentially more exciting, or at least just completely different.
He's right in front of you. Most virtual reality games are geared toward the male youth market, always a willing audience when action and adventure are involved. But Evans & Sutherland have cleverly enlarged the market for VR games.
We worked hard to try to find something that wasn't, you know, a new way to blow somebody up. We wanted to have a more interesting, introspective, and kind of a flying, free-floating thing. And it appeals to women and to older men even, too. So it's been really quite interesting.
Nifty as the hang gliding ride is, Division Inc. has devised an even better way to take mature, money-minded consumers and make VR believers out of them.
It's very expensive to build a house and then say, well, I don't really like the way the kitchen is designed. Can we change it? But if you could walk around your kitchen beforehand and experience it, you can get spatial relationships. You can see, is the ceiling really tall enough? Is the scale right? Can I reach the knobs easily? You can experiment with all those things while in this virtual world.
And what a world it promises to be. Octavia Butler is often hailed as the first celebrated black female science fiction writer. Her stories, many of which explore multiracial future societies, have received science fiction's highest honors, from Hugo to Nebula. To spend time with Octavia Butler is to truly understand how a person's past can shape their future.
So what kind of a child were you like?
I'm an only child, and I had no idea how to get along with other children. And also, I was a strange kid who'd learned to stay by herself and make things up.
Do you remember when you first started writing your stories down?
When I was 10, I realized that I knew the name of a character, but I couldn't think who that character was. And I realized I was forgetting my stories. So I began writing them down then. And at that point, my main character was a magic horse who lived on an island of horses where nobody rode them.
Do you get along better with people now?
I can fake it.
I see.
That is literally true. I know how now, and I can do it for periods of time, and then I have to go back home and hide for a while.
Butler's latest novel, Parable of the Sower, focuses on a young woman who uses her wits to survive in a near-future world as it crumbles around her. But the leadership qualities she's bestowed upon her main character are not a reflection of the author herself.
One of the things I like to do with my writing is explore things that are alien to me. And I'm not a leader. I'm a very solitary person.
So 30 years from now, we're going to be in desperate straits.
Well, I think of the 60s as the decade of attempting to come together. 90s is the decade of disintegration, I'm sad to say. And the 2020s is the decade of real, I call it the burn. Food prices have skyrocketed, sea level the sea level is rising, the greenhouse effect is in full swing. This does not mean that it's the end of the world or even the end of the U.S. Things are just a lot worse.
But we are very adaptable as humans.
I don't know how we're going to end up. Well, the odd thing about my books is, even though there is a lot of pessimism and bad feeling, there is always hope at the end. And it's not tacked on. It's something that grows out of the story, even when I don't want it to.
Why do you suppose there aren't more black female science fiction writers?
Probably because there aren't more. People do what they see other people doing. And if you look around and you don't see very many people who look like you doing something, you worry that maybe there's a good reason for that, and you go and do something else. I don't have any sense. I didn't do that. I looked around and saw that there weren't very many people doing what I wanted to do, and it didn't matter. I still wanted to do it.
Does it give you any sense of satisfaction that you can be a role model to other women who want to be science fiction writers?
I don't recall ever having wanted desperately to be a black woman science fiction writer. I wanted to be a writer. And my attitude was, I am a black woman. And if it doesn't come out in the stories, I can't imagine why. It's there. So it's not something I'm focusing on. It's just there. It's part of it's me. Yeah.
Would you say that you're an upbeat person?
Most of my friends and acquaintances would say no. I probably am. The world is so terrible that if you're really downbeat, you would almost want to kill yourself. And I don't.
Southern California fantasy in the parks, just a couple of commercials away. Summer is a time to seek out some serious good times, and amusement parks are pros at providing the ultimate fun fix. On this week's Buzz Best Bets, we'll fill you in on high-tech attractions that have just opened at 2 Southern California theme parks.
I remember being near a fire like this one. I was sitting in the lap of my grandmother.
Knott's Berry Farm in Buena Park, California, has unveiled a project that took more than 3 years to complete. It's a multi-sensory journey into Native America called Mystery Lodge. And with the help of some riveting effects, audiences are captivated by an old storyteller whose tales magically unfold in a nearby fire. Universal Studios Hollywood recently unveiled their new attractions with much fanfare at a star-studded 30th anniversary celebration. And those in search of summer spectacles will have to look mighty hard to find something that rivals Hollywood Nights. The park unveiled 2 visual stunners to kick off their new nighttime program. The first, Cinemastique, Illusions of the Night, showcases a spellbinding performance by the Pendragons, world-famous illusionists who also happen to be married. And then there's Spectra Blast.
Spectra Blast is a huge special effects pyrotechnic laser fountain extravaganza.
The Hollywood Nights Party, which promises to be a perennial summer affair at Universal Studios Hollywood, boogies on through Labor Day weekend. Those are this week's Buzz Best Bets. Oh, thanks a lot, Lee. Nice job, kids. Way to be.
Good
Nice.
job,
Yeah, it was a
Ryan.
good show, wasn't it? As a matter of fact, here, before we go, I want to tell you about this buzz that just came in here. There's a new Godzilla movie going to be made. And in this version that's still in the planning, Tokyo is spared. Well, you see, it's an American version, so what they're going to do, Godzilla's going to trash San Francisco and New York. What a staff. Well, we'll see you next week.
Go inside Wake Shield, the Big Bang Challenge, and the robotic explorer Galileo on Inside Space tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern. Now stay tuned for Mysteries from Beyond the Other Dominion next.